The second you stop needing a narcissist, the balance of power changes, and that is the part almost nobody warns you about. In their world, your love was useful, your patience was useful, your empathy was useful, but your independence is what shakes them most. The moment you walk away and truly mean it, something shifts, not just in the relationship, but inside them. And what happens next usually follows a pattern so exact that once you notice it, you cannot ignore it again. If you have ever left one and then felt confused by what came after, this is why. It was never random. It was never just emotion. It was a system reacting to losing control. And before we go deeper, stay with me, because the last part is the one most people never see clearly until it is far too late. This is the kind of truth that can save you years of second guessing. Narcissists do not handle loss the way healthy people do. They do not sit quietly with heartbreak and ask what they could have done better. They do not slowly grieve, reflect, and grow. More often, they turn loss into strategy. They turn pain into performance. They turn your absence into a game they still think they can win. So if you have ever wondered whether your leaving affected them, the answer is yes, more than they would ever want you to know. But it may not look the way you expected. It may not look soft. It may not look honest. And it definitely may not look like regret in the normal sense. What it usually looks like is a chain reaction. Cold, dramatic, chaotic, sometimes even pathetic. And every stage tells you the same thing in a different voice. Your leaving mattered. The first thing that often happens after you walk away is not tears, not begging, not open panic. It is a mask, a performance. On the outside, they act untouched, maybe even better than before. Suddenly, they are louder online, more social, more polished, more alive. They post more photos. They seem happier. They laugh harder. They want the world, and especially you, to believe they are doing just fine. But that image is usually not peace. It is damage control. Inside, the shift hit them the moment your energy was no longer available. The second you stopped answering in the old way, stopped chasing, stopped proving, stopped feeding the story that they were irresistible, their ego took a blow. And when that blow lands, many narcissists do not show hurt directly. They hide it under display. They act above it because feeling beneath it is unbearable. So, if they seemed strangely calm after the breakup, do not rush to believe that calm was real. Sometimes silence is not closure. Sometimes silence is them trying to figure out how to restore the upper hand without showing you the wound. That is why this stage confuses so many people. You are at home breaking apart, replaying every detail, while they seem to be glowing in public like nothing even happened. But what you are watching is often a set, not a healing process. It is a show built for one audience, you. They want you to question your decision. They want you to wonder if they ever cared. They want your mind spinning while theirs is quietly planning the next move. So if the first thing you saw was indifference, do not be fooled too quickly. In many cases, that cool distance is not the end of the story. It is only the setup. Then comes the stage that pulls so many people back in, even people who swore they were done forever. This is the reach out, the sudden message, the late night "I've been thinking," the soft check-in that arrives out of nowhere after weeks or months of neglect, cruelty, or emotional absence. It can look innocent. That is why it works. Maybe they ask how you are. Maybe they say they miss your voice. Maybe they mention a memory you once shared, something tender, something specific, something they know still lives in your chest. Or maybe they come back larger than life, full of promises, full of insight, full of change. They say they finally understand. They say they have been working on themselves. They say they were scared, broken, confused, overwhelmed, and now, suddenly, they are ready. This is where the trap gets dangerous, because it does not speak to the logical part of you. It speaks to the hopeful part, the part that loved them for real. The part that remembers the rare warm moments and still wants to believe those moments were the truth and the cruelty was the exception. Stay with me here because this is where people lose months, even years. They are not always responding to the person in front of them. They are responding to the dream they built around that person, the future they imagined, the version of the relationship that almost existed but never stayed. That is why a simple message can feel so powerful. It is not just a text. It is a key turning in an old emotional lock. And if you open that door without seeing the pattern, you can get pulled right back into the same cycle with slightly different words and the same ending waiting for you again. This is why so many people return at least once, not because they are weak, not because they enjoy pain, but because emotional conditioning is real and hope can be stronger than memory when your heart is still healing. The narcissist often knows, consciously or not, exactly which version of themselves to send back. Not the cruel one, not the cold one, not the one who ignored your tears and twisted your words. No, they send back the charming one, the sorry one, the wounded one, the one you spent the entire relationship begging to stay. And for a moment, it feels like maybe this is it. Maybe this is the breakthrough. Maybe all that suffering finally taught them something. Maybe the person you kept trying to reach is finally here. But look closely. Real change does not usually arrive in a dramatic speech timed perfectly when you are pulling away. Real change is quiet. It is consistent. It is patient. It is proven over time. What comes during this stage is often urgent because urgency creates pressure, and pressure makes you abandon your boundaries faster than trust ever should. Watch for that. Watch how quickly they want access again. Watch how quickly they want forgiveness before repair, closeness before accountability, another chance before real evidence. If the connection was deeply toxic, this stage can feel almost supernatural in how precisely it hits your weak spots. That is not magic. That is pattern memory. They know your softness. They know your guilt. They know the exact tone that makes you pause. And if you are not careful, you can mistake being emotionally activated for being deeply understood. There is a difference, a huge one. One keeps you safe. The other reopens the same wound with a prettier knife. So if this part of the story feels familiar, do not look away. This might be the paragraph that helps you stop the cycle for good. If that pull does not work, if you do not answer, if you do answer but stay firm, if you refuse to step back into the role they had assigned you, the energy often changes fast, very fast. And this is where the mask slips, the sweetness hardens, the concern disappears. What comes next is often anger, blame, or punishment. Sometimes it is loud and obvious. Harsh texts, insults, accusations, strange claims that make you sound cruel, unstable, selfish, heartless. Other times it is quieter but more calculated. They start talking to mutual friends. They reshape the story. They leave out what they did and spotlight what you said on your worst day after months of being pushed. They act confused in public and vicious in private. This stage shocks people because it proves something they did not want to believe. The kindness was conditional. The apology was conditional. Even the softness was conditional. It all depended on whether you returned to your place in the system. The second you do not, you become a threat. And a narcissist often cannot tolerate being seen as the one who lost control, the one who was left, the one who could not keep the grip. So they rewrite the script. In their version, you were impossible. You were ungrateful. You were dramatic. You were the problem from the beginning. Why? Because your leaving does not just hurt their feelings. It challenges the identity they built around being the chooser, the desired one, the untouchable one. And if that image cracks, they feel exposed. So they attack the mirror instead of facing what it shows. That is why this stage can feel so personal and yet so strangely disconnected from reality. Because it is not really about truth. It is about control over the story. And if you ever saw a person turn cold the instant they realized they could not control you anymore, then you already know exactly what this looks like. And this is where many survivors get trapped in a different way, not by going back, but by trying to defend themselves, trying to explain, trying to correct every lie, trying to prove they were not the monster they were suddenly painted as. That impulse is human. Of course it is. When someone twists your reality, your instinct is to stand up and shout the truth. But here is the hard part. In this stage, they often want your reaction more than your return. Your pain becomes proof to them that they still have access. Your anger tells them the cord is still attached. Your need to clear your name keeps you emotionally locked in a fight they know how to prolong. That is why so many people feel exhausted after leaving. The relationship ends, but the battle over meaning begins, and it can be brutal. One minute you are trying to heal, the next you are defending your character to people who never saw the closed doors, the silent punishments, the subtle humiliations, the confusion you lived inside for so long. If this happened to you, hear this clearly. Their smear does not define you. Their version is not your identity. And not everyone needs your side in order for your side to be true. That line matters. Hold on to it, because the more grounded you become, the less power the distortion has. They may still talk, they may still perform, they may still act as if they were the victim of your boundaries. Let them. Truth has a steadier pulse than performance, and over time people notice patterns. They notice chaos traveling with the same person into every room. They notice the endless cycle of blame. They notice who keeps trying to live and who keeps trying to win. So, if this stage found you, do not mistake the ugliness of it for proof that you made the wrong decision. Often it is the opposite. Sometimes the rage that follows your exit is the clearest confirmation that leaving was necessary. Then comes the part that stings in a very specific way. The new person, sometimes within weeks, sometimes within days, sometimes, if we are being honest, maybe they were already waiting in the background before you even left, and suddenly that new connection is visible everywhere. Photos, posts, hints, smiles, public affection, inside jokes put on display like a billboard meant for your eyes. This is one of the cruelest stages because it hits more than one wound at once. It hurts your heart, your pride, your memory, and your sense of reality. You start wondering if any of it was real. You start thinking, was I that easy to replace? Did I mean so little? How can someone who once said all those things move on like this? But the speed is the clue. Healthy people do not usually leap from deep attachment into public intensity without carrying emotional fallout. When a narcissist appears to move on at unnatural speed, it is often not because they processed the loss so well. It is because they cannot sit inside the emptiness the loss created. They need fresh attention, fresh admiration, fresh proof that they are still wanted, still powerful, still magnetic. The new person is not always love. Very often it is supply, a source, a mirror, a refill, and this is why the display is usually so loud. It is not just about enjoying the new connection. It is about broadcasting that they are still desired, still in demand, still untouchable. And yes, sometimes it is also about provoking you. They want comparison. They want jealousy. They want to feel that your nervous system still jumps when their name appears. That reaction feeds something in them. So if you saw them rush into something new and it made you feel small, pause right there. Their speed is not proof of your lack of worth. In many cases, it is proof of their inability to be alone with themselves for even a quiet minute. What makes this stage so painful is how unfair it feels. You are carrying the weight. You are sorting through the confusion, the grief, the shame, the longing, the anger, the relief, all of it mixed together, and they seem to be floating into the next chapter without a bruise. But what looks easy from the outside is often just another escape route. Many narcissistic people do not move on. They move around, they switch scenes, they switch faces, they switch emotional mirrors, but the inner emptiness, the same old hunger, the same fragile ego underneath the image that travels with them. The new relationship can look shiny because it is early, because they are still performing, because the new person has not yet seen the machinery behind the curtain. But patterns do not disappear just because the cast changes. And if you keep staring at that new connection, comparing yourself, measuring your value against the attention they are giving someone else, you will miss the deeper truth. They did not suddenly become healthy because they found fresh company. They did what they have always done. They reached for another source before they had to face themselves. This is why so many survivors later hear that the same cycle repeated. Different details, same structure, intense beginning, fast attachment, hidden cracks, control, blame, emotional confusion, collapse, repeat. So do not let this stage fool you into thinking you were the problem they solved. Most of the time, you were simply the person who saw too much and stayed too long. And when you left, they covered the wound with another person instead of cleaning it. That is not healing. That is substitution. Big difference, and if you needed to hear that today, hold on to it. because this is the stage that makes many good people doubt everything they know about their own value. But the final stage is the one hardly anyone talks about, because it does not always happen in public and it does not arrive with dramatic music. It is quieter than that, stranger than that. It is not the clean regret you may have hoped for, not a sincere apology, not the message that finally tells the whole truth, not the sudden awakening where they fully understand your pain and take real responsibility for what they did. Usually, it is something thinner and more restless. A slow recognition that the person who really showed up for them, the person who tried harder than most ever would, the person who saw beneath the image and still offered love, is gone. And not only gone, but out of reach. That realization can follow them much longer than they expect. Not because they miss love in the healthiest sense, but because they miss what they lost access to. They miss the mirror you once held up. They miss the loyalty they took for granted. They miss the way you kept trying to understand them, even when they gave you every reason not to. They may never say it plainly. In fact, many never will, but it leaks out in strange ways. They bring you up years later. They compare new people to you without admitting it. They stay busy, stay distracted, stay surrounded, yet still carry a private irritation they cannot name. Because no matter how many new faces come and go, control lost in a place that once felt secure leaves a mark. And this part matters, so listen closely. Their regret does not always come from empathy. Sometimes it comes from scarcity, from the rare shock of losing someone who finally stopped responding to the script, someone who walked away and meant it. That kind of loss can haunt them, but not in the romantic way movies teach you to expect. It is not candles in the rain. It is not a noble speech at your door. It is more like emotional restlessness. A repeated pattern of chasing the same feeling and failing to hold it. A series of new people who never quite give them what your loyalty once gave them. A private irritation when they realize that chemistry is easy to create, but trust is not. Attention is easy to get, but devotion is not. Admiration is easy to pull from strangers, but the kind of patient, deep, forgiving care you once offered is much harder to replace than they assumed. And here is the twist. By the time they begin to feel the shape of that loss in any real way, you may already be somewhere else inside yourself. Calmer, stronger, less interested in decoding every move, less available to the chaos that once consumed you. That is when the dynamic truly changes. Not when they send a message, not when they rage, not when they flaunt someone new, but when you no longer need any of it to mean anything about you. That is freedom, real freedom. The kind they cannot imitate with a social media post or a rebound relationship or a carefully timed apology. And if you are not there yet, that is okay. Healing is not instant. It is uneven. Some days you feel clear. Some days the memory hits hard. Some nights you still replay the good moments and wonder if you were too harsh. That does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you are human, and humans untangle slowly from things that matter deeply, even when those things were hurting them. So be gentle with your process, fast with your boundaries, and very honest with yourself about what the pattern actually was. Walking away from a narcissist does not always give you a neat ending. Sometimes there is no neat ending at all. Sometimes there is just distance, silence, noise, confusion, and eventually clarity built one hard day at a time. You do not always get closure from them. In fact, waiting for closure from the same person who created the confusion is often the trap. The real closure starts when you stop needing their version of events more than your own lived experience. It starts when your nervous system no longer jumps every time their name appears. It starts when peace begins to feel more familiar than chaos. That does not happen overnight, but it happens slowly, quietly, and then all at once, one day, you notice something important. You are not thinking about what stage they are in anymore. You are not measuring whether they miss you, whether they changed, whether they finally understand. You are paying attention to your own life again, your own sleep, your own joy, your own future. And that is the real turning point. Because leaving was never just about ending a relationship. It was about stepping out of a role that was draining the life out of you. It was about refusing to be reduced to a function in someone else's emotional system. It was about choosing yourself without needing permission. And once you do that, the whole story changes. Not theirs, yours. That is why these stages matter. Not because they should make you want to go back and watch the fallout, not because they should tempt you to monitor every move, but because they remind you that your exit had weight, your absence had impact, your decision was not invisible. Even if they never admit it, even if they never own it, even if they keep acting like none of it mattered, something in the pattern broke when you walked away. So if you have seen any of this play out, trust what you saw. Trust the fake calm. Trust the sudden message. Trust the blame, the image management, the quick replacement, the strange long-term orbit that never quite makes sense unless you understand the pattern beneath it. None of this means you were powerless. It means your presence carried more value than they knew how to honor properly. And when that value was no longer available on demand, the system reacted. That reaction is not your responsibility to fix. Let me say that again because some people need to hear it twice. Their reaction is not your responsibility to fix. Your only job now is to stay close to what is true, stay loyal to the version of yourself that fought hard to leave, and keep moving toward the life that no longer requires you to shrink in order to be loved. And if this connected with you, really connected, do not brush past that feeling too fast. Sometimes one clear insight can undo years of self-doubt. Sometimes hearing the pattern out loud is the exact moment you stop blaming yourself for surviving it. If that happened while you listen to this, hold on to it. Save it. Come back to it when memory gets selective and loneliness tries to rewrite history, because that happens too. And when it does, you need truth louder than nostalgia. You need clarity stronger than craving. You need to remember that leaving was not the end of your worth. It was the beginning of your return to it. And if you have lived through this, you already know the hardest step was not understanding them. It was finally choosing not to abandon yourself anymore.